And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the president of the White House Correspondents Association from CBS News, Weijia Zhang.
Welcome to the 2026 White House Correspondents' Dinner. Thank you to the President's own Marine Corps Band, led by Drum Major Master Gunnery Sergeant Stephen Williams and vocalist Master Gunnery Sergeant Kevin Benier. Good evening to everyone. President Trump, Madam First Lady, on behalf of the White House Correspondents Association, thank you for being here. It is meaningful that you're with us tonight. And White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, thank you for everything you and your team does to work with us every day, whether you like it or not. I'm biased, but covering the White House is the best assignment in all of journalism. We have the privilege of covering the biggest story in the world every single day. The speed is exhilarating, demanding, and it offers a critical public service. Strong journalism benefits the entire country. Tonight, we will celebrate the exceptional work you have done and toast a group of promising students who want to follow your lead. Of course, at the heart of both of those things is the importance of the First Amendment. I want to take a moment to recognize some important people who helped me tackle this job and who helped make this night possible. First, to the members of the White House Correspondents Association, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to lead. It is an honor and a privilege. Thank you to my advisor in this role, Kelly O'Donnell of NBC News, and to the other past WHCD presidents who have helped me navigate challenges. To my CBS News bosses, Tom Sobrowski, Barry Weiss, Mark Lima, thank you. Thank you for your leadership and support. To the relentless CBS News team, especially the White House unit, I am grateful to call you not just colleagues, but friends. And thanks to the mentors and other friends who have kept me balanced this year and always. And of course, to my family. In a world full of chaos, you are my calm, and I love you. We have a big night ahead, and we're gonna get started now. So enjoy your dinner, and we'll be back. Thank you.
things, and certainly in this moment, that's what was happening. Now, the president said he wanted this to go on. It was clear, as I mentioned, Secret Service determined that wasn't possible. I'll remind you that on January 6th, it took hours for, not to compare the situations, but just because that was something Congressman Raskin kept saying, it took hours for them to be able to go back inside because they had to make sure that every square inch of that place was processed. They had bomb squads go in, making sure there was nothing left, no incendiary devices that were left behind. And in this situation, it sounds like they think that they apprehended whoever it was. The details are still unknown, and I don't want to misspeak, but definitely just, I don't even know the word for it, but for the president to attend this dinner for the first time, it was America 250. It was a really important year. We had those America 250 pins on the table, which I don't think any of us grabbed. And for this to happen, I think, is just another reminder of the political divisiveness that we all experience covering it, and also covering members of Congress and covering the White House as well.
Yeah, Julian, we want to be clear that there has been no motive released at this point yet. Authorities have not said whether the president was absolutely a target at this situation. We know that there are so many high-ranking White House officials, other dignitaries, the nation's top reporters, the nation's top press, all gathered in one room. And you have all talked about the moments of chaos being a guest in this ballroom when this was happening. And yes, obviously a panicked and a chaotic time. But Julie, what struck me just by looking at the video was the swift sort of orchestration by the Secret Service, by those law enforcement officials. And of course, this is what they're trained to do. But that orchestration of quickly and sort of calmly evacuating that head table, the president and other dignitaries up there. I wonder how that moment felt to you, Julie, as all this was going on. Did it feel under control, or did it feel completely panicked?
No, it felt under control. And again, we've covered these. Unfortunately, too many to count. Whatever the motive is, it's a devastating experience to be in this and to watch that kind of chaos unfold. But to your point, it did feel like it was under control. And House Speaker Mike Johnson actually just posted on X. I mentioned that I saw him and his wife Kelly get ushered out very quickly by Secret Service. I mean, within minutes. Of course, in those moments, it's hard to tabulate how much time passes because seconds feel like minutes and so forth. But he posted saying, Kelly and I were at the event tonight and we're thankful no innocent people were harmed and everyone is now safe. And he said, we're grateful as always for the law enforcement and first responders who acted so quickly to bring the situation under control. I think that was the theme of the night. The officers did act quickly. It was unclear, you talk about the chaos. Again, bridging my personal experience, which is a little bit of fear, of course, and watching, VIPs in the room, the president, we had members of the administration just all over the room. People, like you mentioned, who are important, who are targets, no matter what side of the aisle they're on. And so in this situation, of course, as a journalist, you're watching to make sure to see who was being moved out of the room when, and it was clear that they were prioritizing particularly the members of Congress who have a detail, and particularly the president, members of the administration. As you mentioned, the president was taken off stage quickly. There is some conversations that I've had, again, not verified, but that they were moved, at least members of the administration, to a temporary location within the hotel. I think that is logical to assume. And then, of course, we know the president was eventually moved out of the property, away from the property where he is expected to address the nation from the White House.
Yes, momentarily, we think. Julie, stand by for us. Thank you so much. We want to go back to Ryan Nobles, who was at the dinner and then is now safely back at our bureau in Washington. Ryan, what can you tell us now?
Well, we are still trying to figure out exactly whether or not the shooter, the person responsible for this, what their condition is. And that is not something that we've been completely made aware of at this point. We do know that the shooter was apprehended. We don't know if the shooter was killed, if the shooter was injured, what the situation was, but law enforcement officials have told us that the threat no longer exists. So that's one of the big things that we are trying to understand. We also know that the president is going to speak about this probably in the next 10 to 15 minutes, depending on when he can get back to the White House. It was a very chaotic scene in this part of Washington, D.C., trying to get back from where we were at the Washington Hilton to where I am at our bureau, which is just across the street from the U.S. Capitol. There were numerous streets that were shut down. There was a helicopter that was circling the Hilton for a certain period of time. You saw SWAT teams rushing to the scene at that point. As Julie pointed out, there was also a bit of confusion as to whether or not they wanted people to stay in the building, if they wanted people to leave. I know in my case, our bosses instructed me to try and get back to the bureau as quickly as I could. So I made it through kind of a circuitous route through the bowels of the Washington Hilton, and then left through a basement entrance to get outside of the building and then leave, and no one stopped me from leaving. In some cases, they were asking people to stay. In some cases, they were asking people to leave. So it was very much a situation where it wasn't exactly clear how they wanted to handle the situation and then what the next stage of all of this was going to be. And then the other thing I think is important to point out, which we've made this point before, but I think it's worth repeating, is just the number of important people and dignitaries that were in the room tonight, and then how quickly the law enforcement response was as a result of that. Each one of these folks, particularly the folks that are in the line of succession, when you think of the President of the United States, the Vice President, the Speaker of the House, the Secretary of State, they were all in the room. The Secretary of Defense was in the room. Each one of them have their own private security details. And you can see in this video that we're showing right now, they were literally leaping on tables to get to the principles that they were supposed to protect. And I was struck, at the beginning of the dinner as we were walking in, the volume of people that you saw with earpieces in their ears, which is an indication, it's a tell right away that they are law enforcement and a security detail, not necessarily just somebody that's at the dinner. Most of them also were not dressed in tuxedos for the most part. So there was an overwhelming law enforcement presence, and they were also quick to respond. The other thing that I thought was interesting about it, and the reason that you knew that this wasn't a typical situation, is that many of them had their guns drawn. And, I have to say, I've been around law enforcement, Capitol Police, Secret Service, Metropolitan Police, folks that aren't in uniform that go to events like this and are protecting principles. They are unbelievably professional. You never see their firearms. They always have them holstered, ready to go at a moment's notice, but they never take them out unless there is a threat. And honestly, Jessica, that was the first time that I was nervous when I saw those law enforcement officers with their guns drawn, prepared to act if they needed to, which is just not something that you ever see happen, despite the fact that you see this level of law enforcement at events like these all the time. So that gave us a real understanding that this was not a situation that they were taking lightly. And then, once the president was out of the room, once most of the principals were out of the room, it was very much a wait and see moment. What's going to happen now? What more do we know about this situation? And then from there, it's kind of devolved to where we are now, where the president has said that he's okay, all the members of the cabinet are okay, and then he's going to talk about this a little bit later on. And Jessica, you made a point earlier that I think is worth going back to, and about the significance of Donald Trump being at this event tonight. Donald Trump is now in his second term. He has never been to a White House Correspondents Association dinner. This has long been a tradition of presidents to attend the White House Correspondents Association dinner. President Biden went to 3 of the 4 in his term. The one he didn't go to was during the height of COVID, and there wasn't a dinner. And it's just something that he has always skipped for one reason or another. And he obviously has a very adversarial relationship with the press. And so this was considered a bit of a breakthrough, the fact that he had decided to attend the event. But there was a lot of anxiety as to what the interaction was going to be like between the president and the folks that cover him on a day-to-day basis. Some of the folks that were going to win awards tonight were people that won awards specifically because of their coverage critical of this administration on many different levels. And so, I spoke to someone close to the president prior to the event who had actually seen his remarks and had said that they were going to be funny and that they were also going to be devastating. But to also expect that he was not going to stick to his script. Many people thought that there was a possibility that he could speak for more than an hour tonight. Given that this was his first opportunity to speak to this particular group. And there was a lot of controversy around it as well. There were many people that questioned whether or not journalists should be in that room tonight, given how confrontational the president has been with the press, the fact that he's called the free press the enemy of the people, and whether or not it was appropriate for those of us to be in that room. So the fact that this all happened in the wake of what was going to be his first appearance at the White House Correspondents Association dinner as President of the United States, I think is significant and is just another important point to be made in what was, truly a night that none of us expected.
Ryan, on that point, the lashing out that the president has done of the press at times, perhaps this terrible situation can be a moment that, even for a short period, unites the press and the president, or perhaps smooths over what has been a very contentious relationship. Ryan, stand by for us. We want to read a statement that the Secret Service has put out. The U.S. Secret Service, in coordination with the Metropolitan Police Department, is investigating a shooting incident near the main magnetometer screening area at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. So that area is inside the building. The president and the First Lady are safe, along all protectees. One individual is in custody. The condition of those involved is not yet known, and law enforcement is actively assessing the situation. So Secret Service says law enforcement does have a person, the shooter, in custody. It is unclear if anybody else was hurt during this situation. We do know that the president and the attendees at that ballroom, in that ballroom tonight, are safe. They have been evacuated. Reporters, correspondents, press is still, we believe, making their way out. As we're told, the event has been postponed. The president wants to do it in the next 30 days. It is unclear whether that will happen, but we are awaiting remarks from the president of the United States right now in the briefing room. Until that time, we want to go back to NBC's Julie Sirkin, who was attending the dinner tonight. She's now outside the Washington Hilton. Julie, one of the things that Ryan Nobles and I talked about a little bit is the several layers of security that you had to get to even get into that building or anywhere close to the ballroom. It's unclear whether this person had a ticket and that's why he or she was able to get inside, or perhaps they'd already been in the hotel, possibly a guest. I'm wondering if you're hearing anything along these lines yet tonight.
Yeah, it could have been any situation because this hotel has so many different entrances and exits. And I will tell you, like I mentioned, in years past that I've attended, the president mostly always attends. I've only attended under President Biden, the last year of President Trump. Either way, the security here is always intense. And you get dropped off blocks before the entrance of the hotel. There are some protesters, of course, but I actually thought in my head for a moment that there seemed to be less right around the hotel, at least at the entrance I was walking into. So they really tried to get a handle on this event. I've covered several of the president's events since the assassination attempts. There's always a high level of security. Secret Service is always well coordinated in those moments. It's gotten to the point where the vice president and President Trump rarely travel to events together because they don't want to be in the same room, given the heightened security posture for every elected official, well-known person, what have you. But I just want to point out a couple of things. You were talking about whether anyone was potentially injured. When I was standing outside of the Hilton, maybe about 45 minutes ago at this point, I saw an ambulance pull up. I thought it was a little bit late, given that we had already been evacuated. I would think that an ambulance would arrive sooner, but the ambulance did end up leaving without any visible signs of a person being loaded onto the stretcher. So perhaps that was a precautionary step that they took after the fact, but I didn't see anyone loaded on there. What I did see, however, was that far after this situation, when we were evacuated out of the ballroom, Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen, former senator newly confirmed as the head of DHS, he was being ushered out with individuals that were wearing heavy equipment. I don't know where they were from. He had bomb squad around him, FBI. These individuals were in helmets. They were in a green kind of military-looking garb with heavy guns. As Ryan mentioned, the first time you feel like they might be ready to use them. And I saw him get into his car. I saw his wife get into another car separately. So they were still trying to move principals out of there, even when the dinner seemed like it was going to resume for a moment. Just now, a couple moments ago, as I was standing here, we watched another crowd of journalists and others clearly exiting the hotel. So they were in the ballroom thinking that this dinner was going to resume. Linda McMahon, the education secretary, went back into the room. So clearly they were around, the members of the administration, thinking that this was going to perhaps restart, because presumably the president wanted it to, as he posted online. But clearly it turned into a situation where they needed to get a handle on things. Obviously these situations take time. They have different squads going in. And again, I was with Congressman Raskin, who wanted to go back into the dinner, but just didn't see how it could happen given how long it took them to go back into the building on January 6th after everything was checked, just in case there could be anything else inside or a risk of somebody else involved. Because as I mentioned, there are protesters outside. There are hotel guests staying. When we were in the bar area before the dinner began, greeting our colleagues, there were just patrons near us, like it normally would be any other year. People who are just staying in the hotel. So yes, there were many layers of security. There's caution tape actually going on up to my right. They're still trying to cordon off this area that we're standing in. Just to paint a picture a little bit, I don't think we can move the camera too much, just given our circumstance here. These are police vehicles. They want to keep the street clear. The noise you heard earlier was because too many people were crowding in the street, and they needed to keep this area clear. The hotel, though, it's close, but it is, across the street, all the way to my right. And again, you see just how big this area still is that is cordoned off. So clearly this is still an active scene. Nobody is really permitted on these intersections, and they weren't. A lot of this was closed off before the dinner began to limit traffic to this area. But this is still an extremely active scene in the sense that law enforcement is still trying to figure out what is going on. And as Janine Pirro, the U.S. Attorney for D.C., posted from inside the dinner, the mayor was on her way here, different members of law enforcement were on their way here to try and figure out and answer the question that you've been asking, Jessica, which is how did this person or persons get through these layers of security, get through showing their ticket multiple times. As Ryan said, I showed mine at least 6 or 7 times, at least, and had to show my credential at one point as well. So there was a lot of security to get into this dinner, but still things like this happen. But now we're hearing from some of those lawmakers, some of those principals that were in the room, members of the administration that were taken out, who are now just thanking Secret Service for the swift response.
Julie, I love the spirit of wanting the show to go on and wanting the dinner to continue. But when you talk about security, it just seems like security aside and having to ensure that everything and everyone is safe aside, it seems like an impossibility to have gotten everyone who had evacuated back inside with those proper security screenings once again. Can you take us through the mood outside the hotel? I know you just did that a moment ago, but kind of the drastic change in what the mood has been since you were inside and got yourself out to safety, and now just sort of what's happening outside as this investigation is in its very early stages.
Yeah, I mentioned this earlier. As journalists, and there are many still out here, you want to capture what is happening. You want to capture what is happening around you. But this was also a situation that was happening to you. And I think so many people have gotten used to this feeling of having to prepare for the worst. But in that moment, again, you were really split between trying to see who was taken out, trying to make sure, as you heard Ryan mention, the Secret Service and the officers jumping over the tables. I was under one of those tables, and I heard that, and I didn't know if that was a shooter, if that was Secret Service, that was officer. I didn't know what was going on. And my colleague told me that it was officers, and I looked up and I saw all the lawmakers being ushered out, and I saw that happen. I would say in terms of the mood, there are some people who just live in this neighborhood, near this street. This is a neighborhood in the heart of D.C. It is very safe. It is very quiet in some of these streets. This is very residential for those watching who don't live here or live around here. But again, this is a major meeting point. This hotel has one of the largest ballrooms. I mentioned earlier there are many ballrooms within this hotel. There are many events held here with lawmakers. The president has been here before. He's held events here. So this is a meeting place that is used to holding high capacity events. They are used to having to juggle multiple balls, for lack of a better term, because they have so many guests staying here all the time, and they have so many events happening as well. So there are so many unanswered questions, unanswered questions about how this individual got in here, where they were from, who was their target, their motive. We don't know that yet. And as you pointed out, of course, I just think this is a situation where everyone is heightened. And certainly the people around the president are heightened, including his Secret Service team. And again, just a lot of action still around here. These streets are closed. Apologies, I'm wearing high heels. I try not to trip here, but certainly still a lot of media you see of different outlets. And as I was walking out, there were different media trying to ask me what happened inside, those who didn't attend the dinner. But I would say in terms of the mood, the president said he's going to do it again. And of course, that spirit is shared, like I mentioned earlier, on both sides of the aisle. I've heard it from both sides of the aisle walking out. And I think it's because this is a city, like many cities and towns, that have gotten used to these kinds of situations. As you hear right now, the officer there directing traffic, people who are either going to the hotel, because remember, there are multiple hotels where I'm standing. That is a hotel right across the street. You see it there, a little corner of it. But the officers are really trying to direct people away from this area if they do not absolutely need to be here, because this is still very much an active situation. Jessica?
Julie, thank you so much. Great reporting. Glad you and the rest of our correspondents are safe. Let's go now to NBC Nightly News anchor Tom Yamas, who will now take over our coverage. Tom.
Jessica, thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. Tom Yamas reporting tonight from Washington, here in the nation's capital. I just left the Washington Hilton, where this entire security incident unfolded just about an hour and a half ago. I was seated with Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the NBC News table, alongside Secretary Wright, the Energy Secretary as well, Andrea Mitchell, Kristen Welker there as well. When we were looking at the stage, we noticed the commotion on stage, and you've seen the images over the last hour and a half, what has happened there. Secret Service rushing in, guns in hand, fingers on the trigger, and they were headed straight for President Trump, who they had now lifted off the stage to the back. He had hit the ground just like everybody else in that ballroom had, and it was unclear what exactly had happened. What we know at this hour right now, according to NBC News reporting and what law enforcement both in D.C. and the White House has put out, a shooter has been apprehended. There were shots fired outside of the ballroom. The president, though you may think was never in harm's way, that somebody with a shotgun was that close to the president inside the same hotel, obviously does not bode well for anybody who was in that ballroom. It could have been much more dangerous, and a lot of kudos to the Secret Service and to law enforcement there in Washington, D.C. to take down this shooter, because it was unclear exactly how close he could have gotten. At this hour right now, the dinner itself was going to have to be canceled because of law enforcement and the dangers and the security protocol that were happening at the moment. We know the president will host a news conference from the White House shortly to talk about what he experienced, what he saw, and what he's been told by the Secret Service. Ryan Nobles has been joining our coverage, has been covering this from the moment that it happened. Ryan, quite the night here, and it's not lost on me that we were both anchoring tonight in tuxedos, having rushed from this event and now telling the viewers at home exactly what has happened. And over the year and a half, I've been thinking about sort of the White House press corps and the campaign reporters that have been with President Trump since Butler, and how much they have gone through and seen some of those same people that were there in Butler when that happened. Of course, the president almost losing his life, Corey Compantore losing his life in that assassination attempt. And then now, a year and a half into his presidency, the president's life again threatened right at the White House Correspondents' dinner.
Yeah, Tom, it was pretty remarkable to be in that room and hear what initially, and I don't know from your perspective what it sounded like to you, but it didn't sound like gunshots. It sounded like maybe a waiter had dropped a a glass or something along those lines. Maybe a table had tipped over. I heard a sound, and then, like you, I saw everyone begin to duck, and then you saw Secret Service and law enforcement come rushing into the room. And honestly, of all the possible outcomes as to how I thought this night would end, I did not think it would end in this fashion. But it was remarkable just how quickly the law enforcement and Secret Service were able to rush to get into the scene, to take the president, make sure that he was out of the room and get safe. And then also keep in mind, Tom, the volume of principals that were in that room, people in direct line of succession of the presidency. You had the Speaker of the House, you had the Vice President, you had the Secretary of State, you had the Secretary of Defense, you had sitting at my table was the House Majority Whip, Tom Emmer, the third-ranking member of the House of Representatives. And so each one of them had their own specific private security details. Each one of them were ushered out in a different form or fashion to get them out of the room and make sure that they were safe. There was a significant period of time where we just did not know whether or not we were safe, just whether or not the threat had ended. I know from my perspective, and I'd be interested to hear yours, Tom, especially since you were with the Secretary of State. While I was with the whip, his security detail came over and they were standing over top of him. They had their hand on his back. At one point, they were talking on the radio. They said shots fired. That was the first time that I had heard definitively that shots were fired. And then they were making a decision as to whether or not they should take him out of the room or just continue to have him shelter in the spot that he was in. The minority whip, or the majority whip, I should say, had a different complication in the fact that he's dealing with a foot infection and could not put weight on one of his feet. So they made the decision, despite the fact that he was dealing with that injury, to kind of prop him up and help him limp out of the room. And I think that demonstrated just how concerned they were about that situation. And so you saw every one of these cabinet secretaries moved out. You saw every one of these high-ranking members of Congress moved out of the room. And then there was a holding pattern as we tried to wait and figure out exactly just how serious the threat was. It was a very chaotic environment. You did not know exactly what the outcome was going to be. Thankfully, no one was hurt that was in that room, and what could have been a very, very difficult and dangerous situation, perhaps the best outcome as a result of all of this, Tom, given exactly what happened.
Yeah, and as we continue to cover this breaking news situation, we do want to remind our viewers we're waiting for the president to speak tonight. He has said he will hold a news conference at the White House. It's unclear if he'll be taking questions. Of course, he'll talk about what he saw, what he was going through. NBC News has video that we've shown. It's also on all our social media accounts that at the time that this happened, the president was looking at a trick from the mentalist Oz Perlman, and he was essentially looking at the trick, and I think Oz was talking to the First Lady, and as this was happening, this is when they started to notice something, and you slowly see Secret Service agents crowd in front of the president. And I understand we're gonna take a network special report. We're gonna pause for a second.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Tom Yamas.
And good evening. We are coming on the air right now with breaking news out of Washington, D.C. President Trump is about to speak at the White House after shots were fired just outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner tonight, forcing the president and other top administration officials to evacuate the Washington Hilton. The president was attending the event for the first time as president alongside members of the press and was expected to give remarks. The president posting on social media that the shooter is in custody and that the First Lady, the Vice President, and all cabinet members are in, quote, perfect condition. The Secret Service is now investigating the shooting incident. The president is about to speak. When he does, we will bring that to you live. You can see right there in the briefing room as we await the president to come in. You'll notice I'm in a tuxedo, and that is because we raced from the Washington Hilton here to our studios in Washington, D.C. This is a very unusual night, and hence the unusual appearance. For this report, Gabe Gutierrez, I understand, has made his way to the White House right now for us. Gabe, you and I were inside the Washington Hilton when this happened. I was seated next to Secretary of State Marco Rubio to one side and the Energy Secretary on the other side. When this commotion happened, everyone hit the ground. looking, the Secretary of State looking at both his wife, who was across the table, and also at the president, and wanting to see what was happening, as I was trying to tell him to get under the table, because they were asking everyone to get under, and then Secret Service and law enforcement going table by table, taking each cabinet member and their spouse out and getting them to a secure location after the president was safely behind the stage, from what we understand, when this first happened. And it was really unclear, Gabe, what was happening. We saw law enforcement come in. There were scores of agents and law enforcement and Secret Service that came in, guns drawn, fingers on the trigger, and they were just rushing through that ballroom, really not letting anything get in their way so they could make a beeline towards the president. Gabe, I know you were sitting just behind me, and I'm not sure if it was who was sitting at your table, but I know there were other cabinet members that were sitting all around us at the NBC News tables.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Look, it was a surreal experience. Secretary Burgum was at my table. He immediately dropped to the ground along with his wife, as you described other high-level cabinet officials did. And it was extremely remarkable and surreal to see so many Secret Service agents storm into the room. And Tom, this came during the salad course. The president of the White House Correspondents Association had just spoken, introduced the president and the First Lady. The Star-Spangled Banner had played, and there was an energy inside the room as we awaited the president's remarks that all changed completely suddenly with the evacuation of the president of the United States. Now, shortly after that, we did see some posts on social media from President Trump. He had said that he wanted the show to go on, in his words, but that it would be up to law enforcement. And then in a subsequent post, he said that Secret Service had decided that he should be evacuated from the premises. And that's when he announced this press briefing at the White House, which is about to get underway. My colleague Garrett Hake is awaiting those remarks there. And we hope to learn more information about what actually led to this incident, Tom. We had spoken with a witness who had heard what sounded like gunshots in an adjacent room. Again, we are still awaiting the details of what led to this possible shooting, if it was in fact gunshots, or what exactly led up to all of this, Tom. But it was very sudden. The night turned rather dramatically. And again, right now we're waiting to hear from the President of the United States. He says that he wants this event to be rescheduled at some point within the next 30 days, Tom.
Again, we're waiting for the president at any moment. We do have an update right now. We understand the suspect has been arrested and is being treated right now at the hospital. We believe this is for a gunshot wound, but again, this is a very fluid situation. We are still getting details in, and I'm sure we'll learn much more from the president as soon as he takes that podium. We can't stress enough how many people were inside that ballroom at this dinner. Almost the entire cabinet. There's usually a designated survivor, Gabe, and we know even from talking in our talks with the White House, somebody's always a designated survivor, so there is a line of succession that can withstand. But you had everyone from the Secretary of State, as we mentioned, to the Vice President, to the Secretary of Defense, in that room, all seated very close to each other. I'd say 500 to 600 people, I'm not sure the exact number, inside that ballroom, all very crowded. So when the Secret Service rushes in, they didn't have a whole lot of space, but they were able to clear a lane out and get right to the president.
Yeah, that's right. And look, Tom, you had a good vantage point. My back was immediately to the president, so I did not see him being evacuated. My eyes turned to Secretary Burgum, who was at my table, and then the other people. It was a very confusing scene because you did not know exactly what was going on. You heard some noise from the back of the ballroom as those Secret Service agents stormed in, some with guns drawn. And then as soon as you turned around, the president was already gone. Certainly Secret Service agents making it a split-second decision to evacuate the president in any scenario that could potentially threaten his life. But yes, as you mentioned, it wasn't just the president. Vice President J.D. Vance was also on stage. Other high-level officials from the Trump administration, the press secretary Caroline Leavitt had just been introduced, and very high-level officials. Now, certainly this dinner, this was the first White House Correspondents Association dinner that President Trump had been set to attend while he was in office. He had attended twice before as a private citizen, and his speech, highly anticipated. Perhaps the tone of his remarks, an administration known of being contentious with the press before. However, the president was set to give remarks. He had been invited by the Correspondents Association, and he had accepted. Certainly a very difficult night.
And we have to remember, we are right now a nation at war with Iran. There was an Iranian plot that the White House has spoken about to kill President Trump. We also know domestically there have been at least two attempts, if not more, on the president's life. One where he was almost killed. Corey Compentori killed there in Butler, sitting just behind him, a local firefighter who lost his life in that assassination attempt. And then we also saw Charlie Kirk and what happened with him, killed in front of a college audience. It is a very, very violent time right now in this country when it's come to political violence, Gabe. And this dinner happened sort of under the auspice of all of that. And that we're a nation at war right now, and the security situations are very, very tricky right now.
Certainly, and look, I did hear somebody cry out from the table next to me, "Not tonight." This was a dinner that was celebrating the First Amendment. It was a time for journalists, and again, an administration that can at times be combative with the press, but in this particular situation, agreed to come to this dinner. His remarks were highly anticipated to see what tone he might strike, given that there was so much going on across the world. Of course, no one wanted to see what happened here tonight, and there are still a lot of unanswered questions about what exactly did happen. I can tell you security at this event was extremely tight, as you would expect. There were numerous protesters outside of the Washington Hilton protesting the war in Iran, as well as, we've seen protesters before. These dinners often attract protesters that are critical of the administration, especially if the president does attend. But this was a dramatic change just as this dinner was getting underway. It was tightly packed in that room, and it was a dramatic shift. And right now, we're waiting to hear the president's first public comments on camera since this event unfolded just a short time ago.
And we'll hear his perspective, Gabe, which we haven't heard yet. He's posted on Truth Social, but from the videos that we've seen from the pool feeds that were inside, essentially, the pool of cameras that were capturing this event, the president looked right at those front doors when they burst open. That's when we all looked towards the front doors, the entrance to that ballroom, and when Secret Service came rushing in. Ryan, I do want to talk to you about sort of the bit of chaos and why it was such a terrifying scene for the people inside the ballroom, because there were so many people, hundreds of people in there, right? And the Secret Service was jumping table to table. The president is coming in right now with the First Lady. Let's listen in.
And that was very unexpected, but incredibly acted upon by Secret Service and law enforcement. And this was an event dedicated to freedom of speech that was supposed to bring together members of both parties with members of the press. And in a certain way it did, because the fact that they just unified, I saw a room that was just totally unified. It was in one way very beautiful, a very beautiful thing to see. A man charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons, and he was taken down by some very brave members of Secret Service, and they acted very quickly and have just released, for purposes of transparency, clarity, I've ordered it to be put out. You probably have it by now, put out on Truth and put out on many other platforms. A tape showing the violence of this thug that attacked our Constitution, and also showing how quickly Secret Service and law enforcement acted on our country's behalf. Really did a great job. One officer was shot, but saved by the fact that he was wearing obviously a very good bulletproof vest. He was shot from very close distance with a very powerful gun, and the vest did the job. I just spoke to the officer, and he's doing great. He's in great shape. He has very high spirits, and we told him we love him and respect him, and he's a very proud guy. He's very proud of what he does, Secret Service agent. And we looked at all of the conditions that took place tonight, and I will say, it's not a particularly secure building, and I didn't want to say this, but this is why we have to have all of the attributes of what we're planning at the White House. It's actually a larger room, and it's much more secure. It's drone-proof, it's bulletproof glass. We need the ballroom. That's why Secret Service, that's why the military are demanding it. They've wanted the ballroom for 150 years for lots of different reasons, but today's a little bit different, because today We need levels of security that probably nobody's ever seen before. But everyone owes a tremendous debt of gratitude to the courage of law enforcement, the law enforcement, and working with the D.C. police. And we just spoke with the mayor. And when we're finished, the police chief is going to take over and discuss it also from their viewpoint. But they also performed exactly as they were supposed to. And you see the attacker in different positions, but you also see the attacker totally subdued and under control. So as you know, this is not the first time in the past couple of years that our republic has been attacked by a would-be assassin who sought to kill. In Butler, Pennsylvania, less than 2 years ago, you all know that story. And in Palm Beach, Florida, a few months after that, we came close. We really had, again, we had some great work done by law enforcement. But in light of this evening's events, I ask that all Americans recommit with their hearts in resolving our difference peacefully. We have to resolve our differences. I will say, you had Republicans, Democrats, independents, conservatives, liberals, and progressives. Those words are interchangeable, perhaps, but maybe they're not. But yet everybody in that room, big crowd, record-setting crowd. There was a record-setting group of people. And there was a tremendous amount of love and coming together. I watched, and I was very, very impressed by that. But First Lady and I were taken very well care of, very quickly rushed off the stage. Vice President J.D. Vance, who's here, was likewise beautifully done. He was just saying how quickly everybody acted, law enforcement, Secret Service in particular in this case, but law enforcement. Marco had the same thing. Pete was there. Pete didn't want any help. He didn't want anybody to help him. He doesn't want anybody to help him, but he did get some, didn't you? And I think you also said that it was very impressive. So with that, I'd like to ask Todd Blanche to come up, say a few words, and tell you it's already underway. The man has been captured. They're going to his apartment. I guess he lives in California, and he's a sick person, a very sick person, and we don't want things like this to happen. I think it's very important that I say, though, and I told the representatives of the evening, they did such a beautiful job. It was such a beautiful evening. And again, they're talking about free speech in our Constitution. That's what it's all about, not just White House correspondence. It was really based on free speech in our Constitution. But I said very importantly that we'll do it again within the next 30 days, and we'll make it bigger and better and even nicer. So I just want to thank everybody that was involved. I also want to thank the press, the media. You've been very responsible in your coverage. I will say I've been seeing what's been out, and you've been very responsible. So Todd Blanche, I'd like to say a few words, and then we're going to have cash. And then you're going to go on. We can ask, I guess we can take a couple of questions. I want to thank the First Lady that was a rather traumatic experience for her. There was a lot of action taking place up there very quickly. But again, the response time was really incredible. And we're going to reschedule. We're going to do it again. We're not going to let anybody take over our society. We're not going to cancel things out because we can't do that. We wanted to stay tonight. I will tell you, I fought like hell to stay. But it was protocol. They said, please, sir, because they didn't know there was a lot of action going on, and they didn't know could there be probably a lone shooter, but we'll find out. We'll find out very quickly. They have it very well under control. So I want to thank everybody very much. And Todd Blanche, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Tonight you saw the very worst and the very best of this country. You saw the very worst by the actions of that coward that the president just talked about. But you also saw the very best because you saw law enforcement do exactly what they're supposed to do. And you'll see the videos come out, I expect, very shortly, and you'll see law enforcement do exactly what we want them to do. And so I echo what President Trump just said, that we are extraordinarily grateful and appreciative of the men and women of law enforcement that did their jobs tonight, including one who was who was injured. This investigation is ongoing. I expect you will see charges filed shortly. The charges should be self-evident given the conduct, but as you'll hear, there will be multiple charges surrounding the shooting, around the possession of firearms, and anything else that we can get on this guy. The investigation is obviously ongoing and just started. There is federal law enforcement already working on search warrants and doing their job, and I don't want to get ahead of them and don't want to get ahead of the work that they're doing even as we speak. Director Patel and I were just on the crime scene a short while ago, and everybody in this room should rest assured that the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI, Secret Service, everybody's on the scene doing their job. I know that the police chief is going to give an update from the scene as soon as we're finished here, and I obviously will lead the details of what they have learned to him. But in the meantime, I just want to thank everybody in this room for the courage, and I want to thank President Trump for his words, and I promise you, justice will be served. Thank you, Director Patel.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr. President. The President's absolutely right. You saw the best resolve of American law enforcement because you, Mr. President, inspire them 24/7, 365. You give them the resources that they need, and they know that you have their back. And that is a changing dynamic in this country, and that's why you saw brave Secret Service agents respond immediately, swiftly, subdue and take down the suspect, and safeguard the lives of thousands of individuals at that hotel. Thanks to our interagency partnership with the Department of Homeland Security and the Metropolitan Police Department, the FBI was rapidly deployed onto the scene, took over the evidence response unit, is examining all the ballistics that were found on scene, to include the long gun and the shell casings. We are conducting witness interviews as we speak. You will hear from our team on the scene there with the mayor and the head of the FBI field division there. But please know what the Attorney General has just said reigns no truer. You saw the very best of America tonight. The very best unite us at a time of uncertainty, because we have leadership here with the President, the Vice President, that backs law enforcement, and the men and women that I shook their hands on the scene today could not have been prouder to show up on scene. And as the Attorney General said, make no mistake, we are conducting witness interviews. If you have any information whatsoever related to this event, 1-800-CALL-FBI. 1-800-CALL-FBI. No piece of information is too small. No piece of information is inadequate. We will evaluate it all. We will also be conducting interviews of those that were there. And if any of those individuals have information, please come forward to law enforcement or the FBI or the Metropolitan Police Department. We will be examining this individual's background thoroughly. That process has already started. And we are going to ensure that he was either a lone wolf actor or anyone else that was responsible. We will analyze all evidence immediately to make sure that we safeguard this country. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, thank you for your leadership. Attorney General and Homeland Secretary Marlin, thank you for your partnership in law enforcement.
Thank you. Okay, we'll do a couple and then we go to the chief. Madam Chairman, I just want to say you did a fantastic job. What a beautiful evening, and we're going to reschedule. And after that, it's very tough for her to ask a killer question, right? But you have done a fantastic job. Please.
Mr. President, I appreciate it. As you mentioned, it all happened so quickly.
Yeah.
And I wonder, especially because unfortunately you have experience with these sorts of threats, in that moment when you realized there was a threat and service agents were telling us to get down, can you describe what was going through your mind, how you were feeling in that moment?
That's a very good question, actually. It's always shocking when something like this happens. It's happened to me a little bit, and that never changes. The fact we were sitting right next to each other, First Lady on my right, and I heard a noise and sort of thought it was a tray. I thought it was a tray going down. You know, I've heard that many times, and it was a pretty loud noise. And it was from quite far away. He hadn't reached the area at all. They really got him. But so it was quite far away, but it was a gun. And some people really understood that pretty quickly. Other people didn't. I was watching to see what was happening. Probably should have gone down even faster. Melania was very cognizant, I think, of what happened. I think she knew immediately what happened. She was saying, that's a bad noise. And we were whisked away, along with other people, but we were really whisked away. And again, the performance of the Secret Service and the police, all of the law enforcement, I thought was really good. So it was very quick. There wasn't a lot of time to be thinking, because it was a matter of seconds before we were out the door and gone into an area. We very much, and you wanted to too, we very much wanted to continue it, because I don't like to let these sick people, these thugs, these horrible, horrible people, change the fabric of our life, change the course of what we do. So we held out. You were there. We held out right till the end, but they didn't want to take a chance, and I understand there was protocol. But we're going to be doing one hopefully within the next 30 days or sooner, and I am ready, willing, and able. And I was all set to really rip it. And I said to my people, this would be the most inappropriate speech ever made if I said one. So I'll have to save it. I don't know if I could ever be as rough as I was going to be tonight. I think I'm going to be probably very nice. I'll be very boring the next time, but we're going to have a great event. And you did a fantastic job. Thank you very much. Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, President Trump. There's a report in the New York Post that this assailant assembled his weapon somewhere on site at the hotel. What do you think about that? And I ask respectfully, why do you think this keeps happening to you?
Well, you know, I've studied assassinations, and I must tell you, the most impactful people, the people that do the most, you take a look at the people, Abraham Lincoln, I mean, you go through the people that have gone through this where they got them. But the people that do the most, the people that make the biggest impact, they're the ones that they go after. They don't go after the ones that don't do much because they like it that way. And when you look at the people that have either, whether it was an attempt or a successful attempt, they're very impactful people. Just take a look at the names there, the big names. And I hate to say I'm honored by that, but I've done a lot. We've done a lot. We've taken this country, and we were a laughing stock for years, and now we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. We've changed this country, and there are a lot of people that are not happy about that. So I think that's the answer, Peter.
And after Butler, your team for a while rethought outdoor events.
Yeah.
Do you think that you now need to rethink
No.
indoor
Well,
events?
but then you just don't do events. No, I can't do that. I have to. It is what it is. We have to do it. The room was very, very secure. You know, he charged from 50 yards away, so he was very far away from the room.
And what did you think when you saw the video of how fast he was running?
He was moving. He was really moving. And the reaction time was great. Boy, those guys, they had their guns drawn literally by the time he was there. They were shooting.
That's right.
I thought they were very impressive. And if I didn't, I'd let you know. I'm not going to be, I would not stand for that. No, I thought they were very impressive.
Thank you, President Trump, and thank you for updating us on the
Thank you.
suspect earlier. Were you aware of any threats? Was your team aware of any threats beforehand? And do you believe you were the target of this tonight?
I guess. I mean, these people they're crazy. They're crazy, and you never know. He was very far away from me. He had to go through a lot. We had resources all over. We had resources sitting at tables, literally in disguise, sitting maybe at your table, who knows? But we had people all over the room, so he had a long way to go. That was really a first line of defense, and they got him. And they really, they acted incredibly. No, there was no notification. We had no idea. Go ahead,
Do you know
Kevin.
any political motivations from this?
Well, you never know. Now, we'll be able to tell you that maybe by tomorrow or the next day. He's in custody, and they're asking him a lot of questions. I guess they're going over, Todd, and they're already at his apartment. He lives in California.
Yes, sir.
And they're over there, so they'll be able to tell you. Thank you, Caitlin.
Did the suspect say anything, or was he wearing anything that would allege some type of motive here?
No, I mean, he was a guy who looked pretty evil when he was down. They had him down. He was fighting hard. He was in my opinion, a sick person. Who would do that but a sick person? But I think you're going to find everything about him. No reason to talk about it now. But tomorrow at this time, long before this time, you're going to know a lot of things about him. They seem to think he was a lone wolf, and I feel that too.
Are you concerned about U.S. Secret Service protection ability? We saw several of the detainees take minutes to be escorted out the room.
No, they acted very quickly. No, I was very impressed by Secret Service. I mean, I'm the one, and Mark Wayne, you would agree with that, I think. I'm the one that would complain. You don't have to complain for me. I would be complaining. I'd be up here right now saying they didn't do their job. Oh, believe me, because, you know, it's my life. And I want to live because I want to make this country great. That's why I want to live. But when you're impactful, they go after you. When you're not impactful, they leave you alone. Okay, a couple of more. Go ahead, please.
Is there any indication that this shooting could have been linked to the war in Iran?
I don't think so, but you never know. We're going to know a lot. We have the best people in the world working on it, and we're going to know a lot. Please.
Mr. President, there's a lot. There's you, as well as some of us who have covered Butler, experienced another horrific day 2 years ago.
Yeah.
What felt similar? You know, you had the First Lady with you today. What felt different? And you have another 2+ years in office. Are you concerned about something like this happening
Well, I
again?
can't be concerned. I can only get great people. They did the job, in my opinion, a much better job than Butler. Butler had one weak spot that we all know about. Somebody should have been up there. But even Butler, we had our sniper on our side within 4.2 seconds from a distance of about 400 yards, one shot, and he was gone. And if he didn't do it, now, you know, he's David. His name was David. I say, hello, David, every time I see him. David, I like you very much, David. But think of that. Now, if he doesn't hit him, and he hit him right between the eyes from 400 yards without any notice, nobody knew. He heard a sound. He looked over, and there was actually a tree that was somewhat in his way. You know the story very well. And he aimed, he fired, and if he didn't do that, beyond me, you would have had a lot more people killed. We lost one great person and 2 people very badly hurt. They're okay now. But no, that was so. In a sense, you know, it was pretty amazing the job they did. But they did have that one weak spot, as you know. They should have had that covered. Tonight they had everything covered very quickly, and he was fast. He was running full blast, and they got him before they got any further. I was very far away. You know, he hadn't anywhere close to breach the doors of the ballroom. The ballroom was sealed, and everybody in there. That's why once those doors opened, they didn't want to do tonight. If the doors weren't opened, we could have probably done it tonight, but I think we're much better off rescheduling. Yeah, please.
Mr. President, for you and perhaps law enforcement as well, what is the level of confidence that this was a lone actor, and has the suspect made any statements to police while in custody?
Yeah, I think it's just it's not my profession. We have great professionals up here and outside that have been working with us. My impression is he was a lone wolf, whack job. These are crazy people. And they have to be dealt with. We had that in the second attempt, as you know, and he's spending life in prison. Because if you let him out, they'll probably, you know, if he serves 10 years or 15 years, you let him out, he'll probably try it again with somebody else. They're sick people. We have a lot of sick people. But you're going to know, I think very shortly, you're going to know, Todd, a lot about him. You're going to know a lot about him. Yeah, a couple of more. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Are you concerned about political violence? This could be politically motivated.
All violence. You know, I'm concerned about everything. Look, but I can't be so concerned that you can't function. No, I'm here. It's a dangerous profession. You know, I tell the story, race car drivers, I think it's very dangerous. So if you take 1% and then take about 10% of 1%, just to break it down very easily, they die. So much less than 1%, 10% of 1%. I think bull riding is very dangerous. If you take about the same 10% of 1%, much less than 1%, but if you take presidents, it's 5.8%, and about 8% are shot at. So nobody told me this was such a dangerous profession. If Marco would have told me, maybe I wouldn't have run. Maybe I would have said, I'll take a pass. No, it's a dangerous profession, but I don't view it that way. Look, I'm here to do a job. As part of the job, it is a dangerous, I can't imagine that there's any profession that's more dangerous. but I love the country, and I'm very proud. I'm very proud of the job we've done. You see what's happened. We have a great country. We've got, I think, the most successful, the hottest country anywhere in the world. This happened over a period of just a year, and we're going to do great things. But with that come risks. There's no question about it. Yeah.
To that end, I mean, there's been so much political violence, not just aimed at yourself, but at other members of Congress, state house speakers, you name it. Is that just the cost of doing business to do politics in America anymore?
Yeah, well,
what does that say about our country?
Too. We're not the only country. You look at this great violence with all countries. I was talking to somebody from another country today, and they have numerous assassinations of political figures all over the world. You look at South America, it's like some of the numbers are just horrific. It's dangerous stuff, whether it's here or someplace else. No country is immune. No country. Good question.
Will we turn that temperature down at this point?
Well, probably if I decided to just not do much, if I let everybody rip us off and take advantage of us. Look, we're leading the world in trade now. We're leading the world in the military. We're the greatest military in the world. I rebuilt it in my first term, and now we use it because we have no choice. We can't let, as an example, Iran, we can't let them get a nuclear weapon. Everything will be peanuts compared to that if they ever were given a nuclear weapon, and they'd use it too. Marco and I were talking about it today. They would use it without even hesitation. We can't do that. It was a shame. I said, oh boy, look at the numbers. We just broke 50,000 in the Dow. We just broke 7,000 in the S&P. They said we couldn't do it in 7 years, in 5 years, 4 years. They were saying maybe in 5 or 6 years. And we did it in 1 year. And I called everybody together. I called all of these people and others, and I said, we have to take a little journey. I seek to do this. We just had the great number. We just broke 50,000. Wasn't supposed to happen during my term. Wasn't reachable. We did it in 1 year, and I said, we're going to have to make a journey to Iran. They're going to have a nuclear weapon if we don't do it. We had the B-2 bombers take them out. I terminated in the first term the Obama agreement, the Iran nuclear agreement, which was a disaster. That was a road to a nuclear weapon. They would have used it. They would have used it 100%. So, when you do things like that, you become a target. If I wasn't doing that, I guess I'd be a lot less of a target. But I'm honored to be. Okay, one more question.
Thank you, President Trump. Do you know how the gun was brought into the hotel? And also, how does this event impact you as the leader of our country? Do you think it will change your
I like not to think about it. I lead a pretty normal life, considering it's a dangerous life. I think I handle it as well as it can be handled. I think a lot of other people, you read stories where they become basket cases. To be honest with you, I'm not a basket case. I really take it as it is. I do it for the country. I'm not doing it for any other reason. I have a first lady who's doing a terrific job. She loves the country, and she recognizes it better than anybody. She's told me numerous times. She said, you are in a dangerous job, but that goes along with her too. I mean, it's dangerous for her too. We sat there tonight, we heard that noise, and it was either a tray or a bullet. I was hoping it was a tray, but it wasn't. And again, we had some very brave people doing a great job, so we're very proud of them and happy with them. I just want to thank everybody. They will be able to give you all that information as to the names and everything else. I think we released the names already. Most of you would have it, but his name. We appreciate it. I see so many tuxedos and beautiful dresses. It was a little different evening than we thought, but we're going to do it again, and we have a great chairman who we're so proud of, and we have to make it better. We'll make it safer, I guess, right? But we're going to make it even better. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
President Trump, can we hear from her about how impactful this was? Can we hear from her about...
Well, honey, would you want to say something?
Okay.
One in the back.
One in the back,
Millions of people across the globe, in fact, are watching you. You demonstrated courageous leadership, and thank God you're alive. All of us are alive today. What is the message that you want to give to the world that this should change? What corrective measures can we take from here on?
Well, all you can do, look, I don't care how many people you have, how good they are, They can be the greatest people. You have the greatest security in history. If you have a whack job who's got a brain, but it's a little bit distorted or a lot distorted, they can make trouble. I would say, Pete, right? You know, they can make trouble. Some of these people are of genius level IQ, and they're nuts. So it can be trouble. So you do absolutely the best. You get the best. We have the best people. Well, look, it was proven tonight. He started running from 50 yards, and he was fast. He was like a blur on tape. He was moving. It was very impressive the way they got him, because a lot of people would be looking and saying, you know, it's like a weird feeling, and they would let him get through, but they didn't let him get through. They drew those guns so fast. They looked like Matt Dillon. They looked like somebody that knew what they were doing. What do we do? But it comes with the territory. And if you want to do a great job, I really believe that. And you take a look at what's happened to some of our greatest presidents, and it doesn't happen to people that don't do anything. And it's not going to deter me from winning the war in Iran. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. I really don't think so, based on what we know. But we're going to continue to do a great job. That's all I can do. Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Thank you.
We've just been listening to the president speak after shots were fired just outside the White House Correspondents' dinner at the Washington Hilton in the nation's capital. The president saying a man who lives in California charged a security checkpoint armed with multiple weapons before being taken down by the Secret Service. I'm going to ask our director to roll that video that has been released now by the White House. You can see how fast this man was coming. Look to the left side of your screen. He's sprinting right past Secret Service when they draw their weapons and begin to fire. The shooter was not able to breach the doors to the ballroom dinner. The president also sharing that a Secret Service agent was shot in the chest but was saved by a bulletproof vest. The president saying he heard a loud noise and thought it was the sound of a tray going down, and he was quickly rushed off the stage. The president also praising law enforcement for acting quickly and saying he hopes he will be able to share more on the shooter's motivations in the coming days. The White House also releasing a photo of the alleged shooter taken down by both Secret Service and D.C. law enforcement. This is a picture right now. One of the images they've released. They've released two different images of the shooter. It's still unclear, one, how he brought the weapon into the Washington Hilton, how he was able to bring that weapon into the hotel where the dinner was being hosted. Two, how he was able to at least run as fast as he was, running through at least one perimeter. But again, the president making it very clear he was very far from the entrance to the ballroom. Essentially saying that his life, the president's life, it was in danger, but not in danger in the sense that the man was so close he could start firing through the doors or at least into the ballroom. And again, we're still learning a lot as we get more information from the White House. At any minute, we're waiting for D.C. Police, the Metropolitan Police Department here in Washington, along with the D.C. Mayor, Mayor Bowser, to host a news conference to give us some information. As soon as that starts, we're going to bring that to you live. Gabe Gutierrez is at the White House for us tonight, along with our team. Garrett was in there as well. Garrett Hake, who asked the president a question about essentially political violence in America right now. We've seen this happen at state houses. We've seen it happen across the country. 2 or more attempts on the president's life. And now what we saw tonight here at the White House Correspondents' dinner. Gabe, the president also saying he started to study assassination attempts because of what's happened to him, and he's learned a lot from them, and also making the case for the ballroom that is now in the hands of a court, and the reason that it should be built because it can be protected better. The president questioning the security at the hotel, saying it was not very secure in the president's word. We went through security. We saw that there were metal detectors there, but it is a hotel. There are some policies the hotel has to follow with guests that are staying in the hotel that are not going to the dinner. It's not exactly a perfect place to host this in the sense that things like this can happen, and they did tonight.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Look, the president said in his view that this was not a particularly secure building, but he went out of his way repeatedly to praise the actions of the Secret Service and of law enforcement that were there on the scene. You mentioned the suspect. Yes, as we speak, according to the president, law enforcement is going through the suspect's apartment. He lives, according to the president, in California. The president saying that he believed that this was a lone wolf. but it's unclear if he had any political motivations here. The president did not seem to believe that this had anything to do with the ongoing war in Iran. But certainly, Tom, it was the president's initial reaction, what he said when he first heard some sounds. He said it was, he thought, some trays potentially being dropped. But as you were right there, just sitting across in the next table from me, this all happened very quickly. Secret Service whisked him away. Now, the president releasing, really just as he began talking, that striking video of the suspect sprinting past the security checkpoint. You're right, the security checkpoint significantly outside of where the ballroom doors were. The suspect never got to the ballroom doors. The president saying that he was stopped very quickly by the Secret Service. But yes, the president is suggesting this was not a particularly secure building, using the opportunity to argue for why he needs a secure event space here at the White House. The president, of course, very fond of holding indoor events. And even next week, we expect the president to hold a state visit here at the White House by King Charles. The president saying that, of course, after the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, some of his outdoor events, security there was reconsidered. He was asked whether security at indoor events might be reconsidered. But the president saying that he was satisfied with the how the Secret Service responded to this particular incident. Significant, though, Tom, revealing that the suspect did allegedly fire on these officers, and that an officer could have lost his life if not for the bulletproof vest that he was wearing. But again, this investigation very early on, the president saying that he believes it is a lone wolf, but political motivation still unclear at this point, Tom.
Can take no chances in this type of political atmosphere. Gabe Gutierrez, stand by for us. I want to bring in Garrett Hake, who was inside that briefing room, and you had a chance to speak with the president. Garrett, talk to me about the way you saw the president. You were just inches from him in that news conference. Actually, Garrett, stand by. The D.C. mayor's about to speak. Let's listen in.
Yeah, we're going to the mayor.
All right. Are we ready, guys? Start. Okay. All right, man. We're ready whenever you are.
Good evening. I'm Muriel Bowser. I'm the mayor of Washington, D.C. I am joined by members of my public safety team and federal law enforcement, including the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro, the Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, as well as FBI Field Office, Darren Cox. We're here to provide you an update on the incident that took place tonight at 8:36 p.m. at the Washington Hilton at the site of the White House Correspondents' dinner. At about that time, a sole gunman rushed a Secret Service checkpoint in a lobby at the hotel. Secret Service agents stopped the suspect. An agent was injured and transported to a local hospital where the agent is receiving care. The suspect is also transported to a local hospital where he is being evaluated. The president returned safely to the White House, as you know. We are so very thankful to members of law enforcement who did their jobs tonight and made sure that all guests were safe. We have no reason to believe at this time that anyone else was involved. I want to turn to the Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department, Chief Carroll, to provide a law enforcement update and specifics.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, I'm Jeff Carroll, Interim Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department. This afternoon, this evening, members of the United States Secret Service and the Metropolitan Police Department were here at the Washington Hotel for a site detail for the Correspondents' Dinner. As the mayor mentioned, at approximately 8:36 tonight, an individual charged a U.S. Secret Service checkpoint here in the lobby area of the hotel. He was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives. As he ran through that checkpoint, members of law enforcement from the United States Secret Service intercepted that individual. This is a very preliminary investigation at this point. We do know that law enforcement exchanged gunfire with the individual. We do know that a U.S. Secret Service Uniform Division officer was struck in his vest. He was transported to a local hospital for treatment. He seems to be in good spirits at this time. The suspect in this case, he was not struck by gunfire. However, he was transported to a local hospital to be evaluated. Again, we're very early in the investigation. We have members of the United States Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the FBI here to continue to investigate this matter. But at this point, it does appear he is a lone actor, a lone gunman. There does not appear to be any sort of danger to the public at this time. However, we are continuing to investigate this matter. At this point, I will turn it over to, I believe, the FBI.
Hi, good evening. I'm Darren Cox. I'm the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Washington Field Office. The American public should be proud of the quick response and heroic actions from law enforcement officers tonight to keep the American public safe. Their actions are absolutely heroic. The public should also rest assured that there will be no stone unturned during this investigation. The FBI currently has our Joint Terrorism Task Force here on scene, along with our Criminal Division, our Crisis Response Team, and agents from across the country are working on any leads that may come in this investigation. Anyone with tips in this investigation should call 1-800-CALL-FBI. Thank you.
Director Kern.
Thank you. My name is Sean Kern. I'm the Director of the Secret Service. Tonight, we saw exactly what our brave men and women do each and every day to protect our protectees. It's not easy, and I will tell you that they performed admirably. We got to see what they do, and that individual, when he charged a checkpoint, was apprehended. It shows that our multi-layered protection works, and I'm grateful to our partners that help assist us with building these sites and protecting these sites. Very fortunate that this officer is alive, is being observed, and I'm grateful that the President reached out to this officer and spoke with him earlier. I ask everybody to pray for him and all of our officers and agents that were involved, and I will tell you, we will continue with the mission. Thank you.
Judge Pirro.
I'm Janine Pirro. I'm the United States Attorney. Right now, the defendant is being charged with 2 counts, 924C, using a firearm during a crime of violence, and a second crime under 111, which is assault on a federal officer using a dangerous weapon. Now, as you all know, there was an individual, a uniformed Secret Service officer, who was shot. And fortunately, he is doing all right and he will be fine. But it is clear, based upon what we know so far, that this individual was intent on doing as much harm and as much damage as he could. And thankfully, because of the checkpoint right outside the ballroom, where thousands of people were situated to hear the President of the United States, because that checkpoint worked, there was no one who was injured when it was clear where this defendant was going. Now, I want to make one comment. As a participant, someone who was in the ballroom, who came this evening to be part of a very lovely event at the White House Correspondents' dinner, I, for the first time, was in a situation where there were shots fired, shots heard, and a whole room went silent. When I lifted my head and when I looked up, every law enforcement officer was out there as we all had our heads down, thousands of them. These are the men and women every day who do what they do silently, and they do it with courage and with dignity. Thank God for our partners, the FBI, the Secret Service, the Metropolitan Police. All of them tonight acted so quickly that they prevented what could have been a horrific event where we were all sitting there in one room. The defendant will be arraigned on Monday in federal district court. But make no mistake, There will be many more charges based upon the information that we are learning in this very fluid situation. Thank you.
Take a few questions. Right here in the front, right here in the front.
Confirm that this suspect is specifically targeting the president and isn't talking to law enforcement now.
Sure. So at this point, what we know is we know the individual charged at checkpoint with a firearm in his hand. We know he was running in the direction of the ballroom that the president was in, as well as other cabinet members. So what his specific motivation was, we can't say at this point. However, as we continue to investigate that, we'll continue to work towards that.
Chief, when you say you're
Talking to law enforcement.
Layered approach. The point of this checkpoint is to intercept individuals that were there, and what we see in this case is when he reached that checkpoint, Secret Service agents and law enforcement engaged him immediately. They were able to bring him into custody and prevent anyone from being harmed.
Chief Carroll, right here.
Chief Carroll, can you tell us if you found a vehicle associated with the suspect, and are you and the FBI conducting any search warrants either on the vehicle or locations here or elsewhere around the country?
Sure, Mark. So as you can imagine, this is very early in the investigation. So, things we're digging into is his background, vehicles. Those are all things that the FBI, the Metropolitan Police Department, and the Secret Service are working together jointly to determine, is there anything else that's available? So I would imagine as we continue to go through this investigation, there will be additional search warrants and things of that nature as the investigation progresses.
Is this known to law enforcement?
At this point, he was not known to the Metropolitan Police Department, I can tell you that.
Right here.
There are multiple other parties and events happening associated with this weekend tonight. Is there any reason to believe that there will be security concerns at those events? Are there preparations being made locally to protect those attendees?
Yeah, absolutely not. So we have no indication. This is an isolated incident with one individual is the information that we do have. However, we do have additional officers across the city that are giving special attention. We do know there were some after parties and events that are planned that we will be providing coverage for those events.
Yep,
Chief,
right here.
the president said that this is not a particularly secure building. Can you prove that assessment?
I'm not exactly 100% familiar with this building. I do know in this incident tonight, I know there was a security plan that was developed by the Secret Service that the Metropolitan Police Department assisted with, and I know that security plan did work this evening.
Right here.
Thank you so much. Do you know specifically if President Trump was a target of this attack? And can you speak to their reporting about the suspect assembling a long weapon and get into the ballroom?
Yes, as we said before, we do know the president was inside the ballroom. We know there was cabinet members and many guests in there. Who specifically he was targeting at this point, that's part of the investigation. We do know that he was armed with a shotgun when he ran through that checkpoint, so that would look like a long weapon in video.
All right, right here, right here, right here.
Can you clarify, earlier you said there was an exchange of gunfire. Did the suspect fire any shots? And did the uniformed officer, do you know yet which weapon he was shot?
Yeah, obviously we're only a couple hours into this incident, so we don't have that level of information. The FBI's evidence response team is here. They're processing the scene. So as the investigation develops, all that information will be figured out with the ballistics. The ATF is also on scene here with us.
So the suspect did or did not fire a shot?
Sure. So again, it's very preliminary information. We do believe he did. However, as the investigation determines, we'll pull the shell casings. We'll be able to get more information as we review more evidence. We're very early in the investigation.
All right, we can take a couple more right here, and one more over here.
Thank you so much. So, the president said that he wants there to be another event within 30 days. Given what happened tonight, do you have any sense of what additional security measures might be put in place to ensure that something similar does not happen again?
Sure. I'll toss it to the Secret Service.
Yep, this is what we plan for every day. So we take each and every case and we evaluate it, and we do site assessments. And that's why we go out and build these sites per what the event is, and that's how we go about our business.
Will there be any changes or added measures given that this did happen?
We're going to have to evaluate this evening.
Thank you.
Chief, is there any indication how the suspect got into the hotel? Was it a guest here? Are you searching rooms?
So preliminary information, we do believe he was a guest here at the hotel. We have secured a room here in the hotel, and again, we'll go through the appropriate procedures to determine what was inside there. But that is secure. At this point, like I said, we believe he is the only suspect in this case.
Okay. To jump on that question, I understand the multi-approach to security. To walk in with a weapon of that caliber and elevate to law enforcement on the local level seems to be quite extraordinary. How does that happen?
Sure. So again, I mean, we're very early in the investigation, so we'll have to determine, we'll go through video across the hotel to figure out how the gun got in, how it got down here. Those things will come through the investigation. At this point, we don't have that level of detail.
Okay, last one.
Yes, video appears to show the president falling down and being escorted out. Was he injured at all during his evacuation?
No, we don't have any information that he was injured.
All right, thanks.
No.
Could you clarify how he was detained? If he was not shot, could you clarify how he was detained?
Sure. So law enforcement right here in this very area, they actually tackled him to the ground and handcuffed him. Not at this time. We will release his name, Mark, once we have all the information. Again, we're still running a lot of things down. Judge. In the hospital, so we have the Uniform Division Secret Service officer who's being evaluated at the hospital who took a round to the vest, and the suspect is being evaluated, but he was not struck by gunfire.
Just right here, are you looking at any terrorism charges?
Well, as the chief just indicated, we're very early in this investigation, but make no mistake, if there is anything like that, we will find it and we will file it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We've been listening to Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser speak alongside law enforcement about the shooting incident at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We've learned a lot of new information. I'm going to have our director run the video that the White House has released of the gunman running through. Police now telling us he had a long gun believed to be a shotgun as he sprinted through this initial perimeter before getting he was headed towards the ballroom. He did not get anywhere near the ballroom, that according to law enforcement. He exchanged gunfire with the Secret Service. A Secret Service officer was shot, but he had a bulletproof vest. He's being treated in the hospital. The president has spoken to that officer, and he's recovering and okay. The suspect was a guest at the hotel at the Washington Hilton. It's unclear if he assembled his gun inside his hotel room, if he had brought the gun to the hotel room. Police are actively investigating that right now. They're looking inside of the hotel room. They have not released his name. They're saying he's a man from California, and they're emphasizing this seems to be a lone wolf incident. They do not think at this point he had any accomplices, and it does not look like there are any more threats, at least not tonight, from what police have seen. Garrett Hake was inside the briefing room when the president spoke about the incident. And if I could also ask our director to roll the video when the president and the mentalist Oz Perlman, along with the First Lady, were speaking on stage when this whole thing happened. Garrett, tell our viewers exactly what the president says he saw, because he described that he thought it was a tray falling. What he probably heard was the gunfire before the Secret Service rushed in. This is the moment here, Garrett.
Yeah, the president said it all happened very fast. He wasn't really able to process it, Tom, much like the rest of us in the room, and that he thought what he heard was a waiter dropping a tray. There are thousands of people in that ballroom. It is quite noisy. It only became clear to him, as it did for, I think, many of the rest of us in the room, when Secret Service rushed the stage, covering him and the First Lady and taking them out, that this was a much more serious situation. It didn't register at the time that it was gunshots. That's consistent with, I think, the experience of most of the people in the room who heard a loud noise that couldn't be identified in the moment, and then the sort of rush from every angle of law enforcement into the ballroom.
Yeah, Garrett, we were in there. All of us were. I was seated next to the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Energy. We all hit the floor. The Secretary of State looking at his wife who was across the table and at the president. I was trying to get him to come down as well, but he wanted to sort of get a gauge of the situation because it was so chaotic. And then we saw Secret Service jumping from table to table and just taking out each cabinet member to make sure they were safe. You had a chance to ask the president about sort of the temperature of the country right now. Over the last few years, he has seen 2 assassination attempts, maybe more than that. The White House has said the Iranians, there was a plot to kill him as well. We've also seen this happen with Democratic governors in Pennsylvania and other local officials in Minneapolis as well. It's been a dangerous time to be in politics in America.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I covered Capitol Hill before I came to the White House, where threats have skyrocketed in the years since January 6th. And so this culture of political violence has been kind of omnipresent. And I asked the president about that. And earlier in the evening, he had suggested that, he thinks he's a target because he's a president of such consequence. He compared himself to Abraham Lincoln and suggested that that's what happens when you do big things. I sort of pressed him on that idea. Is this the cost of doing business to be a politician in America right now? And he said yes, and not just in America. That he thinks this is a global issue of this political violence, but it's necessary, in his view, to be a person who does big things, and related it to his efforts to pursue his war in Iran right now. And so the president, who's been quite reflective on this, he said earlier in the evening that he has studied assassinations. He talked about percentages of presidents who've been targeted by assassins, and we know from other interviews that he's given that he has, since Butler, thought a lot about his own mortality. I think that was obvious in his remarks here tonight as well.
And as we report this out, we should tell our viewers, it stands to reason the target of this potential assassination attempt was the president, but we also cannot stress enough how many cabinet members were in there.
That's
there
right.
were so many important members of our government, of the American government, that were inside that ballroom, all seated very close together. And luckily, the Secret Service and D.C. law enforcement were able to act and stop this alleged gunman before he got anywhere near the ballroom. Julie Sirkin is outside the Washington Hilton. She's been reporting for us out on the street as both demonstrators started before this dinner, and then after the scenes that we've seen as the president left was rushed out to the White House. Julie, I understand there's another situation that unfolded in front of you.
Yeah, I've been standing out here along with my producer, Kyle Stewart, our cameraman. Again, Tom, just like you, still dressed from the dinner. We walked out here. They've barricaded this area. You can see police tape behind me. It's all around this area. The Hilton is to my right corner. But what just happened was, again, they're not letting people through. This is a residential neighborhood. There are hotels everywhere. Guests who are staying at the hotels couldn't even get access inside. A woman, I appeared to be a woman, driving a car. She pulled up right here, right next to me, where you see the camera panning right now. Again, you see the police vehicles here. And I heard her being stopped by the officer, asked her who she is, and the woman appeared to say, "I am the Minnesota Councilwoman. I am the effing First Lady of the United States." And, put her foot on the pedal, hit gas, and just sped down this street. And then the cop had chased her. I don't know where that stands now, of course, but it just shows you that this is such an active and real situation still, even though the guests have left the ballroom, even though we are one of very few media left here. Things were starting to quiet out a little bit. They just held that press conference with the chief of police, Tom, that you were talking about and listening to, just feet from here, and yet this just happened. So it just shows you that this is still a security situation. They are still trying to figure out what's going on, and that there are still potentially people, even though you heard Janine Pirro say there was just one person involved, there could still be potentially people who they are monitoring out here.
Julie Sirkin, you and your team, please stay safe out there as you continue to report this story out. This is still an ongoing situation. The investigation is just getting started in D.C. Gabe Gutierrez is covering this one for us from the White House as well. The president made a lot of remarks inside that briefing room, and one of the things he wanted to highlight was he is in court right now, battling to finish his ballroom, which is a massive ballroom. Underneath there will be a military bunker of sorts, which the courts have allowed to be built, but it's the ballroom above ground that has been very controversial and is now being challenged in the courts. And the president tonight pointing to this incident, saying we need a safer space to bring our leaders, to bring world leaders to come to Washington and to be able to protect them.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. Look, the president arguing that $400 million ballroom will be funded by private donations, and that's why it needs to happen. Certainly, right now it's stuck in the courts, but he is making the argument that if he wants to hold large events at the White House, indoor events, that he does use this opportunity to argue for why that ballroom is necessary. The president, someone that likes to hold these large events with potentially world leaders or heads of state, and have many cabinet officials, and he used this opportunity in order to argue for that ballroom, Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez first. Again, if you're just tuning in right now, we've been covering the breaking news that happened at the White House Correspondents Association dinner tonight, right here in the nation's capital. A gunman, you can see on the left hand of your screen, running past Secret Service, a checkpoint there, exchanging gunfire with the Secret Service, and ultimately being taken down. A Secret Service agent was shot in the process, being treated at the hospital. Luckily, he was wearing a vest. This is the suspect right now. We don't know his name just yet. We know he's from California. Police are describing him as a lone gunman for now. It is unclear exactly who his target was, but the president was in the ballroom. That concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have much more coverage here on NBC News Now and at NBCNews.com. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Layton. We have been following breaking news out of Washington, D.C. tonight. Police saying a lone gunman armed with multiple weapons charged a security checkpoint in the lobby outside the White House Correspondents' dinner in D.C. Now, in the last hour, we have heard from President Trump, who was evacuated from the event and is safe, as well as local law enforcement who say the suspect was stopped